Ooh, spooky! Today I'm going to be talking about the next arc/saga of One Piece, Thriller Bark. Sorry if I scared you there. Well, right out of the gate, I want to say that Thriller Bark is kind of a mixed bag for me. There are things that I really liked in this story, but then there are some things that kind of got under my skin, and I'm not a skeleton, so I have skin. It was nearly impossible to have a satisfying follow-up to Water 7 and Enies Lobby because those stories were just so good, and at times, it feels like this story knows that and is going through the motions a little bit, especially for a big chunk of the middle. So, in this video, I'm going to be giving my first impressions of Thriller Bark, talking about what I liked, why some aspects didn't work for me, and how I'm enjoying the overall narrative of One Piece so far. If you're new to this First Impressions watch-along series, hey, how are you doing? I have a playlist you could check out if you want to know how I felt about each saga prior to this one, but in this video, I'm going to be talking heavy spoilers, so be warned for any sensitive ears out there. With that out of the way, let's sail on. Before I get into specifics, I want to say that this arc really had me hooked at the start. I'm a big horror fan, and I knew this arc wasn't going to be scary, but I was excited to see the series play with the horror genre. Specifically, the old school, classic Western horror that this arc is filled with allusions to, and I was happy with what I was seeing for a long time. Maybe I'm a sucker for horror, but I felt like Luffy when he first stepped onto Thriller Bark. I was just smiling away with every new monster and zombie that came along. However, from a narrative perspective, this saga did kind of let me down as things became a little meandering with no real thematic payoff to tie everything together nicely. I was riding a high for the first dozen or so episodes, things fell off for me in the middle, and then once the conflict began to resolve, I was extremely impressed with the action and conclusion, even though there were a couple of weak points. With all of that said, I wish you all a happy Halloween. I hope blood and guts pour out of your televisions this fine holiday season, and now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. The story picks up with a slight time jump from when we last saw the Straw Hats soaring away from Vice Admiral Garp at Water 7. The crew has become much more acclimated to their new ship, the Thousand Sunny, and ooh, it's fucking incredible. It's way better and higher tech than I even imagined. The aquarium and dining hall are so beautiful, I want to eat there. The crow's nest where Zoro was hanging out is a dope spot for him, equipped with a loudspeaker, and the different docking modes of the Sunny are bananas. We haven't even seen everything in action yet, but I'm pretty sure there was a submarine in the mix, which is nuts, but the best part is that the waiver is back. Honestly, after Sky Island, I was so pumped to see the waiver used back on the Grand Line, but after the G8 filler arc, it totally disappeared. I thought that was such a missed opportunity to keep the sea traveling fresh and fun, but I doubted Oda, and I especially doubted Frankie, and that's my bad. He transformed the waiver into Mini Mary, and it's so cute. The only use of the Mini Mary in this arc is just to crash and separate the crew, but it's a sweet way to keep the spirit of the Mary with everyone as they continue their journey. Overall, totally digging the Sunny. Now onto the bag of bones this arc introduces. We meet this big ol' lonely skeleton with an afro named Brook, and I think he's hilarious. His skull humor gets me every time, and even when it begins to wear on me, everyone's irritated reaction works just as well. I love how he immediately agrees to join the crew within 5 seconds of Luffy meeting him. It was such a shift with how everyone else joined, and obviously a borderline meta move. Following directly after Robin's long backstory and the build-up to get Frankie to join the crew, for Brook to immediately join was a perfect change-up. Of course, he reneges on his joining due to his inability to leave the fog of the Florian Triangle, and it's here we get allusions to his backstory. I was not expecting him to be a devil fruit power holder at all, but I guess that's on me, and I think the revive fruit is a competent enough excuse to have a skeleton man walking around. That's not all though. We are also told that his shadow was stolen in a completely unrelated incident, and once the Sunny is snatched up by Thriller Bark and Brook takes off happy as a clam, I knew the shadow was going to be the crux of this saga. I'll get more into Brook and his backstory throughout the video, but now let's talk about the crew's adventure on the titular ship. While taking the Mini Mary for a test drive, Nami, Usopp, and Chopper crash land down onto Thriller Bark into a chasm of bones and get chased by a 3-headed monster dog. Things are off to a great start. I think that this trio was perfectly matched up together for this specific setting. It was a really smart move to keep the more scaredy cat group together and send them onto this horror island first. Their reactions to all the different monsters and creepy creatures highlighted just how wacky this island is, plays on horror tropes, and makes for some nice comedy. The zombies themselves are generally hilarious and serve Oda's writing style really well. From what I've noticed, he thrives when he has a large group of onlookers to comment on the actions of the primary characters, and when those onlookers are stitched up zombies, that's a natural comedic boost. So, Nami, Usopp, and Chopper travel in the grossest zombie-drawn carriage, through a graveyard, and up to a gothic castle while absolutely freaking out the whole time, and oh, I have no choice but to love the setting and atmosphere so far. The deeper they get on the island, the more tidbits we get fleshed out. We are told that this castle is the mansion of Dr. Hogback, who Chopper explains was a world-renowned surgeon that disappeared years ago. I really like that Chopper has some kind of connection to a character on this island. It isn't too deep, but Chopper clearly idolizes the Doctor, and in this show, if you have the slightest connection to a villain, that likely means you'll get some good character development later on. I think Chopper has been overdue for some personal reason to fight one of the villains, so this got me excited to see how things would progress with him. Dr. Hogback is, of course, a disgusting, near-vampiric looking man with a zombie servant woman, so it didn't take too much to assume he was a bad boy, but I have to say that Sindri is comedic gold. The fact that she hates plates and serves food just straight on the table is hilarious. Also, how cruel she is to Hogback is delightful. She's one of the best characters of the whole arc. It isn't too long after their meeting that Nami figures there's something up with Hogback, and it's refreshing to see that she isn't a total idiot. Well, she does agree to shower in this creepy mansion, so maybe not. This brings me to the Nami shower scene, and oh god, I don't know how to talk about this. I did rip this series a little bit in my Eni's Lobby video about how I haven't been enjoying the ramping up of sexualizing Nami, and I do think this scene is a bit much. Despite my complaints, at a certain point, I guess I just have to accept how much the animators seem to enjoy showing her off. This shower scene with the Invisible Man is totally messed up and straight up sexual assault. But honestly, I kinda think it works in this context, only because it's playing in the horror genre. I'd never show a child this scene, and I don't think how the character of the Invisible Man develops does this scene any favors, but I think that in the moment, in the context of a mysterious haunted castle with zombies and monsters around, for Nami to get assaulted by an invisible man works. It actually reminds me a lot of the new Invisible Man movie from 2020 with the invisible abusive boyfriend. I do wish they showed a little less of her body to the viewer during this, because that's where the series feels fan servicey, but the scene is definitely played for horror, and it's supposed to be a genuinely terrifying moment for Nami when she is extremely vulnerable, which was new for this show. It does really set an atmosphere and pushes the plot forward by solidifying to the characters that Hogback isn't a good guy. I also have to give credit to the joke that follows this up, when Usopp bursts in to answer her call for help, sees her naked, and immediately thanks her. That's just well-paced comedy. This may be controversial, but I don't think this scene in particular was awful. It is a bit odd for the series, but yeah, I don't know. I don't want to talk about anime titties every video. Following this, I really like Nami's outfit change. In fact, this entire trio has got some fresh horror-themed fashion going on. Nami's in a pink sweater with her hair back, again showing it's now grown long enough to style it that way, with crosses going down the middle. Chopper is sporting a large cross necklace, and Usopp is decked out in his anti-evil stuff, which includes a nice purple cape, a garlic necklace, a poofy musketeer hat, and a banner sticking out from the back that reads, "Evil be gone." Very appropriate for the situation. I was also really digging the Haunted Mansion vibes with all the dark stone hallways littered with random paintings along the walls. The overly dramatic zoom in on one of the paintings before the eyes moved was a really nice touch, reminded me of a classic episode of Scooby-Doo. Then the trio stumbled upon a room filled with photos of Sindri's, which was creepy as hell. The backstory they get from newspaper clippings that she was a noble stage actress who died 10 years ago was pure classic gothic horror, and I loved it. The mystery around Sindri was built up so much during these initial episodes, and at this point I was hyped to see what would come of all this, but for now, let's check in on the rest of the Straw Hats. The The Sunny is stuck in a massive spiderweb and it can't go anywhere. The remaining crew all have a brief encounter with the Invisible Man and decide to head onto Thriller Bark to find Nami, Usopp, and Chopper. I love how this portion of the crew's reaction to the scary stuff the trio saw is so different, especially with Luffy. Taming the Cerberus and pushing a zombie back into his grave were excellent juxtapositions to the original traversal through this area. They also stumble upon a sickly old man who is not a zombie, and he gives them the scoop on what the hell is going on. Turns out, Thriller Bark isn't an island, but it is actually the largest ship in the world, captained by the warlord Gecko Moria, who has stolen the shadows of hundreds of people that now struggle to survive on the island, hiding in the darkness. This is all the information Luffy needed to decide he's gonna kick Moria's ass and get Brook back his shadow so he can join the crew. I thought it was well timed for the overall narrative that the crew was going up against another warlord. It's been a while since they defeated Crocodile, and there are still 6 out there to beat the crap out of, so I was excited to see what Moria could do. From here, things get a little chaotic, so I'll just give a real brief summary. The tough squad begin to get picked off one by one, slowly disappearing as they make their way through the mansion, while the cowardly trio have encountered Hogback experimenting on a corpse, taken a beating by a mummy who reminded them of Brook, and are now being pursued by zombie animals. We see that Sanji, Zoro, and an armored Luffy are kidnapped by little mouse zombies, while Frankie and Robin fend off an attack by the zombie generals and a massive spider monkey monster. Once again, we find ourselves in a textbook shit show. There are 3 things that hooked me during this early action section, and they were the humming mummy, Lola the warthog zombie, and the penguin dog with Sanji's personality. I think it's also notable that the cowardly trio really carry the first act of this arc. What's going on with the tough crew is interesting enough, but it's not what hooked me. So, Lola is obsessed with trying to marry Absalom, aka the Invisible Man, who is obsessed with trying to marry anyone for a reason that is never explained to us, and after seeing Nami's sopping wet body, he has decided he's gonna marry her. However, the whole time he's being hounded by Lola, and honestly, that plotline seemed like it should be really annoying and get under my skin, but it's actually pretty fun. Lola goes after Nami out of jealousy, and how Nami handles deflecting Lola while at the same time scheming to find the treasure hidden in the mansion was really clever and true to character. Nami tells Lola she's a man named Namizo, and from here, Chopper continues to think Nami is a man, which is just right. This whole arc is extremely gag heavy, and for the first third, it really felt like Oda was just cutting loose and having a good time without caring how dumb any of it was. The dog-wind zombie with Sanji's personality is ugly as fuck, but it raised a lot of questions about what's going on with these zombies and what happened to the guys who were taken. This arc actually does set up and tease a lot of different bits really well in this early section. The mummy's connection to Brook is another example of that. However, we get answers to a good deal of these key questions in a hell of an exposition sequence with our cowardly trio hiding assigned a zombie stuffed bear to eavesdrop. They travel within Kuma Sea and find Luffy captured by Gecko Moria, who strips some of his shadow and then stuffs that shadow into a monstrously huge corpse, which animates the body into a zombie called Oars. Insanely enough, everything makes sense now. The shadows are tied into the reanimation of the corpses Hogback works on, thus creating zombies with similar personalities and abilities to those whose shadows they are born from. Also, they have to keep the original people alive or the shadow dies too, which gives a good structure to this arc where our heroes can lose and then fight back to win in the end. As proof of the zombies holding on to their original personalities, Oars awakens, demanding meat and claiming he will be king of the pirates. Will this come into play later? Not really. After seeing this nightmare come to life, it's time to escape. The cowardly trio make a break for it, and it's finally time for Chopper to realize that Hogback isn't a nice guy. He gets furious over the realization that one of his medical idols isn't helping people, but instead enslaving corpses, and I think that's a nice beat. Then, Nami gets kidnapped by Absalom, while Chopper and Usopp are rescued by Frankie and Robin. I have to pause to say that when Frankie called Chopper and Usopp his sworn little brothers, it did not make me emotional at all. Not even a little. I didn't even care, actually. Anyway, they all escape back to the Sunny, where an unconscious Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji lay until Usopp wakes them up with one well-crafted sentence. It's here that Frankie and Robin recall their run-in with Brook during their battle with the spider monkey and pour out the juicy bits our heroes need to know in order to progress, namely that salt is what purifies the zombies, releasing the shadow from the corpse. However, there's also one glorious payoff. one stunningly impressive callback that was nearly 300 episodes in the making. It turns out that Brook was part of the crew of pirates the giant whale Laboon followed into the Grand Line 50 years ago, and what's driving Brook after all the years at sea alone is to keep his promise to Laboon and return to him. Good god damn. I love it. This pretty much confirms that we will get a strong emotional payoff for the Laboon setup at Reverse Mountain, which I really appreciate, and I can't wait to see that reunion. So from here, the crew is launching back into Thriller Bark with a plan. Sanji is going to rescue Nami from Absalom, Frankie and Zoro are going to help Brook in his battle against the mummy, and Luffy is going to kick Moria's ass to return everyone's shadows. You know the drill by now. We've got ourselves another Straw Hat Split Off showdown, where everything sounds simple enough at first, but begins to go to shit right away. For this section of the video, I'm going to break down the action by antagonist, so I'm not jumping back and forth between all of these characters throughout this chaos. Let's start the action, beginning with the Ghost Princess. So I haven't talked about the actual ghosts on this island yet, the ghosts that Perona controls. Thanks to Perona's hollow fruit powers, these little creeps can suck the will to fight right out of anyone they fly through. The little comedic bits this adds to the action are fantastic, namely, Luffy talking about how he wants to be reborn as the lamest sea creatures, and Zoro apologizing for even being alive. So when the four boys run into Perona during the mansion invasion, it pretty much seemed like everyone was screwed. Usopp, Sanji, and Frankie make a run for it, but I think it's a great touch that Zoro stands his ground. Everyone is down, and all hope seems lost, until Usopp launches a salt attack on the zombies. He isn't affected by the ghosts because he's always negative. Hooray! Perona is stunned that there could be a person so negative that they're immune to her powers, and she and the zombies proceed to give a dramatic speech on the goodness of life to try and cheer Usopp up, which I think was pretty damn funny. So the stage is set for this fight. It's Usopp solo versus Perona and her zombies. At first, Usopp seems to be doing a pretty decent job, but Perona makes a break for it, and he has to chase after her while being chased by that zombie stuffed bear. It's here that Usopp busts out Kabuto, and I appreciate the explanation we get for how it works. In Enies Lobby, I just thought it was a big slingshot, but the way it incorporates dials makes it much more powerful than I even realized, and I think that was clever to tie in Usopp's dial collection. However, when Usopp comes upon Perona, things have changed. She can now fly, and she's also intangible, and this is when the fight began to lose me a little bit. Usopp is taking a beating from Perona, then Kumasi comes rushing in and really starts to beat the crap out of him, and when Usopp's internal monologue kicked in, I rolled my eyes. I was like, okay, are we really doing this self-pity thing again with Usopp? What's gonna happen? How's he gonna get out of this? Obviously he's not gonna die, and we just did a similar beat with him so recently. Then he puts on the Soja King mask, and at first I was like, way too soon, but, the way Usopp uses Soja King as an alternate personality that he has to learn from works really well. Usopp was begging to be saved during his beating, and then answered his own call with his confident alter ego, saving himself. This fight almost lost me, but from here, Usopp was able to assess the situation on his own, come up with his own style of plan, and ultimately succeed without anyone's help. But the whole build-up really brings you to the brink of thinking someone else is gonna save his ass. I think it was a purposefully crafted major annoyance, and I respect the hell out of it for the payoff. He wins by using a couple of his classic tricks and tells the unconscious Perona to never challenge Captain Usopp in a contest of lying and negativity, which I thought was great. Despite the fact that I got played like a fiddle, this is probably the best structured fight out of this bunch. Next up, the battle with Dr. Hogback, which is where things really become a mixed bag for me. This fight kicks off with Luffy, Chopper, and Robin running through the mansion to get to Moria, but Hogback intercepts them. Luffy is about to take Hogback on, but Chopper steps up, requesting that Luffy leave Hogback to him, and all I can say is, hell yeah. Luffy's smile, realizing that Chopper has a drive to fight, is a nice subtle moment, maybe not even worth mentioning, but I like it because it's an acknowledgement of Chopper's growth from his captain. Looking back on this arc, Hogback and Chopper have the greatest philosophical disagreement, which is what's driving their confrontation. They argue over what it means to be human, with Hogback claiming that his zombies are human, while Chopper, rightfully, is like, nah dude, you're nuts. What you're doing is immoral. We also get Hogback's backstory, and it's pretty bland, honestly. Notably unremarkable. He was just a smart, famous doctor, like Chopper said, who fell in love with Sindri while she was alive, but she died of a totally separate accident. Moria approached him at some point for his skills, and then he revived Sindri and made her his slave. That's it. I was assuming there would be some twist in there or something at all interesting, like maybe Hogback caused Sindri's accident on purpose, but no. It's just the most by-the-numbers, boring, lovesick backstory for a creep anyone can think of in a minute. This section also introduced something that confused the shit out of me about the personality of the zombies. We are told over and over that the zombies maintain the personality of the shadow that is inside of it. In fact, we are shown that directly during this section with the Zoro and Sanji zombies, but we are never told that the personality of the original body ever comes through. But now, there are a couple instances where it's implied Sindri, whose corpse is the host for another person's shadow, is somehow fighting against Hogback's commands. It was really confusing and felt detached from the rules that have been established, which is fine if something significant comes of it, but literally nothing does, and those moments are the big Sindri payoff. Talk about disappointing and wasting an interesting character, total belly flop. Speaking of the Zoro and Sanji zombies, I think their incorporation into this fight was pretty fun. Since their personalities have nearly vanished, I was pleasantly surprised to see that their disdain for each other transcends confusing zombie rules. Through a miscommunication, Zoro and Sanji's zombies begin to battle, and then Chopper and Robin straight up trick Hogback into ordering them to jump out a window, and while it was a good, cheap laugh, it was also so dumb and lazy. Why the hell would Hogback even do that? Not that I think he saw their plan coming, but in what world does someone say, hey, order us to jump out the window, clearly mocking you, and then you do it enthusiastically? What an idiot! Before Chopper can get the finishing move, Oars bust through, and that's really the end of Hogback and Sindri for this whole arc. Ultimately, while I was happy Chopper had a connection to a villain and a philosophical difference at the heart of their conflict, I was left disappointed by this one because nothing really seemed to come of Hogback or Sindri. Also, since I'll barely mention Hogback again, now is a good time to mention that his and Moria's voice performances are annoying. Yes, original Japanese, get off my ass. They are grating on the ears, especially their dumb laughs. And while I'm at it, Moria's design is dog shit. Looks like a stitched up gray wiener. If you can't tell, this is when the arc begins to piss me off. Alright, now let's talk about something that I actually did really enjoy. I haven't gone in depth on what the deal is with our mummy buddy, so let's start there. Ryuma is the host body of Brook's shadow. He was some legendary samurai warrior from Wano country, which immediately made me pay attention because I know that's where the story is currently taking place. However, Ryuma also brings up another confusing question about how the zombie personalities work, because he has aspects of Brook's personality, like with the humming, but then when he fights Zoro, he's pretty much full samurai mode, acting like his original host body. Maybe it's a general zombie thing? Well, no, because Lola is a general, and her personality is all based on her shadow. Also, these personalities clearly have not gone away like everyone keeps saying. Whatever, I guess it isn't worth getting worked up about, but the lack of any consistency is annoying, especially with how the concept is repeatedly thrown in your face. So anyway, Brook can't take him in a sword fight, but then Zoro and Frankie show up to help out. Well, really, Frankie shows up to wait on the sidelines while Zoro goes full swordsman. He wants that ancient samurai sword, and I want him to have it. This is actually a pretty short duel, ending within the same episode it started, but I think it's probably the best fight Zoro's had since Mihawk. It was concise while showing off Zoro's cocky personality and skills, and ended with him gaining praise from an ancient warrior and earning a new sword to replace the one that was destroyed at Eni's lobby. I think this was fantastically executed. Last and probably least is Absalom. So this beast-mouthed fuck is trying to marry Nami because she's got the rockin' knockers he likes, and that's really all the explanation we're gonna get on this whole situation. Sanji, obviously, isn't very happy with this and shows up to stop the wedding. At first, things were pretty fun, with Sanji having to stop to make sure that really is Nami because she's so beautiful. It was cheesy, but in character. When the actual fight begins though, things quickly head downhill. If you've been keeping up with this series of videos, you know that I've been dying for some Sanji character development and backstory. I know there's something going on with this guy that we just haven't seen yet, and it's driving me crazy how underdeveloped he is compared to everyone else. So, when Sanji told Absalom that he has a grudge against him, I perked up. I was trying to connect the dots before the reveal, grasping at straws for some kind of backstory, going so far as to think maybe they're related because they both have luscious blonde hair. As you can imagine, for this grudge to be explained as Sanji being upset that Absalom got the invisible devil fruit that Sanji apparently wanted since he was a kid so he could spy on women in the shower, was such a massive letdown. If anything, this was backward development for Sanji because I never thought of him as a rabid pervert. Like, obviously he has his thing with women, but I always thought it was a bit more chivalrous than brain-dead horny. Also, by having Sanji's dream be to act even a little bit similarly to the horrible way Absalom treated Nami in the shower, now naturally makes us connect him to the actions of a sexual predator. I said the Absalom shower thing worked because it was played for horror and it impacted the direction of the story. This writing almost makes it retroactively not work because now that's all played up for comedy. I hated this whole section and I was expecting to love it, and the fight isn't even entertaining either. Overall, Sanji's interaction with Absalom managed to be both a massive letdown and sloppy as hell. However, Sanji is interrupted by Oars breaking through the mansion, and Absalom gets away with a still unconscious Nami to go do another wedding ceremony for whatever reason. But this time, Nami wakes up and Lola barges in. Lola tries to protect Nami, but she gets fucked up by Absalom, which for some reason is a big, stunning surprise for Nami that makes her turn back around and fight, even though Lola is quite literally incapable of feeling pain and is 100% fine. Nami uses her climb attack to easily take out Absalom, and this boring, two-dimensional character is finally knocked out. Such wasted potential. In a bit of a refreshing structural change from the previous big fight arcs, now all the Straw Hats reunite after their separate showdowns in order to take on Oars, working together as a team. I also enjoy how Oars' design and size make him entirely unique from any other antagonist they've battled in the past. Luffy is still running around and chasing shadows in the woods, so he's not around for now, but hey, at least he isn't stuck this time. I think the beginning of this fight is pretty entertaining. Oars messes everyone up right away, but they all get back on their feet because the show can no longer hide how unnaturally resilient even the normal characters are. The one thing I absolutely hated about this whole fight is that everyone is talking to this zombie as if it is actually Luffy. Usopp even says something along the lines of, "You wouldn't attack your own crew, would you, Luffy?" Hey, that's not him! That's a zombie under the control of Moria. This happens easily a dozen times where someone's like, "Luffy, don't do this!" And I could accept it if anything came of it, but nothing does. There's never one moment throughout the rest of the arc where Oars resists Moria's control due to his Luffy personality. Oars acts full-blown Luffy when he's first resurrected, and once he falls under Moria's control, he still maintains some aspects of his personality, but that's the extent of it. It's never like he recognizes his crew and hesitates to finish someone off or anything like that. So, if it's not going to come into play, stop bringing it up like it will. It's the same problem as with Sindri. It's during this battle with Oars that Nami runs to the Thousand Sunny to check on Perona and her zombies, loading it up with gold and food to try and escape. She arrives just in time for the introduction of Bartholomew Kuma, which came at the right moment for me. I needed something else to happen to freshen up the conflicts that kind of felt like they were just going nowhere. Kuma provided some interesting insights into the state of the world, gave us an update on Blackbeard as well as the world government's attitude toward the Straw Hats, and then he motivated Moria to prove himself against the Straw Hats and get directly involved in the fight. We'll talk more about Kuma in a few minutes. For now, let's focus on Moria and Oars. So Moria apparently built a cockpit in Oars' stomach that really just serves as an exposed seat for him because there's nothing about the cockpit that he really needs for the actions he's doing. Oars can now stretch his body Rubberman style, and it's because Moria is now manipulating his shadow, which in turn manipulates his body. As ridiculous as it is, I accept Moria is able to shape Oars' body, but where this loses me is utilizing this so effectively in combat. In order to use the rubber attacks, that means Moria has to predict or instantly know exactly what Oars is trying to do and manipulate the shadow exactly as Oars would like to attack. It's just not possible and felt pretty contrived. Pretty much all of Moria's displays of power within this section just felt like they exist so that he can't be beaten until Luffy arrives to punch him real hard. Another example is that Moria says he had a shadow in Oars' mouth, ready to protect him from any salt intake the whole time. But how can that be if he also said he's using his shadow inside of Oars' shadow to manipulate his body? There's just not consistent logic to this battle. So, what has been going on with Luffy since the whole crew split up? Well, he's been running around, chasing Moria and his shadow to the point where now he's just lost in the woods. Pretty much his whole deal for the last 20 episodes. However, there actually is some payoff with this when Luffy meets the Lola Pirates and other members of the Victims Association who have all staked their hope of getting their shadows back on Luffy. They propose to him a plan of powering him up by just stuffing him full of 100 shadows they've somehow captured for reasons the story hopes you will just gloss over, and before Luffy can consent, they begin pumping him full and we get Nightmare Luffy. This brings me to the section of this story that I'm calling the Counterattack. And this is when the arc finally gets back on track. I'd say everything up to the regroup on the Sunny was solid, but the arc really started to slip during the split off showdown. There were some things I did enjoy, but also some things I really did not, and then the battle with Oars kinda just felt like the arc was spinning its wheels. But when Nightmare Luffy arrives on the scene, everything gets 100 times better, which seems fitting. Although at this point I was like, whatever, just another random power-up to drag out this fight, but that was the cynic in me talking, and quickly this story unfolded to show me the error of my negative thinking. Firstly, I think that the design of Nightmare Luffy works. He's got a Frankenstein vibe going on while also looking like a gray Incredible Hulk, and I ain't complaining. It definitely feels like it has horror monster vibes, and not every design has to be over the top. Aside from that, the instant I knew the arc was taking a turn was with how absolutely stupid strong Nightmare Luffy is. He blocks a Gum Gum rifle from Oars with one hand and then continuously beats the crap out of him, no problem. I loved it. This section is also so well paced compared to the last 10 episodes, and because of that, it actually feels like it moves too quickly, but I think it is perfectly concise, trimming all the useless fat and just cutting straight to the point. In this fight, Luffy is way more powerful than I imagined he would be. He dished out insane amounts of strength with his final storm attack, like the kind of power where I figure he'll be at toward the end of the series. It was crazy to see him so strong this early, and clever to introduce a time limit on this power so that it doesn't overstay its welcome. We get just enough Nightmare Luffy before he powers down. It wasn't oversaturated, but delivered big time. The counterattack isn't over yet though, because Oars gets back up after this throttling. The excellent pacing continues, and it felt like someone behind the scenes flipped a switch and just decided to finally have the characters go all out and cut the bullshit. Even though Luffy is pretty beat up from his nightmare form, he rallies the Straw Hats and they launch into a beautiful action sequence. I think that the whole Straw Hat counterattack finisher was great and perfectly executed. Every member of the Straw Hats is doing their part in the takedown of Oars that contributes to the larger immobilization of his zombie body. It doesn't just show off cool action though. What makes it so great is that it incorporates a lot of established information from the arc. There's a payoff with Oars' original cause of death. The locations around the mansion, such as the giant freezer, become important, and even reoccurring imagery like the massive chain hanging over the island gets utilized, all without overly explaining what was happening, while allowing everyone to play to their strengths and unique abilities in a smooth, machine-like, flawless motion, delivering one final victorious attack. It's a fucking excellent sequence, maybe the best continuous action sequence in the whole series. The weird Lola pirates running around add to the sense of insanity and chaos, which is surprisingly juxtaposed by the Straw Hats' execution of their attack. I can't praise this enough, honestly. Extremely well done. Oh, also, This whole thing got third gear to grow on me, no pun intended. I wasn't crazy about it in Annie's lobby, but the giant hands attacking Oars was so dope. For this meandering fight to end in this blaze of glory really brought me back around at this point while watching. Although I think it was a bit unnecessary, I even think that the giant Moria who sucked up 1,000 shadows both looks and sounds way better. There's barely anything to talk about with Mega Moria though. He gets punched good, all the shadows fly out of him, and the day is saved. Or so you'd think if you didn't know there were still 7 episodes left to go. Kuma is still out there, but before I talk about him and then wrap up this arc, I would like to say that the Sindri plates payoff was absolute bullshit. It was just because some maid named Margarita that we know nothing about had a thing with plates. So dumb and such a letdown. Sindri did not get her due at all. Ugh. So when the day seemed to be saved, Luffy passed out, but Kuma received word from the world government to kill the Straw Hats, and so he leaps into action. I think it was an interesting ending that felt more satisfying than anything involving Moria in the entire back half of this arc. He just ended up being such a nothing character. Kuma, on the other hand, actually has some semblance of a personality, and watching the rest of the battered Straw Hats try and go up against this warlord without Luffy added some unexpected stakes at the last minute. However, this section is really Zoro's time to shine. Zoro gets a couple of good hits in on Kuma and even slices him up enough to reveal that he's also a cyborg, which was totally unexpected. While this was a cool reveal, I do feel like it kinda takes away from Frankie's unique addition to this world, and considering how he was just introduced in the prior saga, it did feel like it was a bit too soon to introduce another cyborg, despite Kuma's protestations that he's a totally different kind. Also, Kuma's paw powers confuse the crap out of me. I have no idea why being a paw man allows him to blow pain out of people, but hey, nothing in this arc really makes any sense. For example, I'm not even sure if it's worth mentioning how annoying the lack of damage even the sickly old man takes from Kuma's massive explosion. At this point, I get that every single person on this planet is pretty much incapable of dying from any actions involving the Straw Hats, but it's just irritating, and honestly, it makes any cool display of power like this paw explosion lose all of its impact since I already know everyone is gonna be fine. Cool visuals can only go so far when they're completely toothless, and that's what a lot of these big feats of power have become in this series. That was a bit more complaining than I was planning on for this section, so let me talk about the really good stuff at the very end. Kuma is willing to make a deal with Zoro. If Zoro allows Kuma to kill Luffy, then Kuma will allow everyone else to live. Instead, Zoro offers up his own life in exchange for Luffy's, but before Kuma can agree to this, Sanji steps forward to take Zoro's spot in sacrificing himself, but Zoro knocks his ass out and offers up his life once again. As a surprise to me, Kuma accepts this deal. He removes all the pain Luffy sustained in his fight from his body into one big paw bubble and says that if Zoro takes it all, then he will die and Kuma will accept this exchange. So, Zoro walks right in. Afterward, we cut to everyone waking up and Sanji sees that Zoro is gone. He runs off and finds Zoro standing in a bloody patch, his arms crossed and dripping fresh blood. When Sanji asks what happened, Zoro says, "Nothing happened." So fucking badass, man. I love this exchange between these two characters because although they give each other a hard time, this is the first time we really see the respect they have for one another, especially when Sanji tells those who did witness what happened to Zoro to keep it to themselves. After this, Kuma has disappeared and the day is finally saved, with Zoro needing some serious medical attention. I really dug this quick Kuma involvement. It set up another interesting antagonist down the line, and now Zoro has developed a personal connection with 2 warlords who have both utterly messed him up. I'm really looking forward to his interactions with both Mihawk and Kuma down the line now. Before we reach the end, I want to briefly talk about the theme that Thriller Bark presents. I've alluded to this earlier, but I was honestly pretty disappointed in how this arc didn't really have a major thematic statement at the end, or really any kind of satisfying emotional payoff. The big climax of this arc was really just some action, and don't get me wrong, the action was amazing in that final sequence, but there was a lot of loose ends that just didn't coalesce into something concrete. So Moria's entire personality is that he plans to use his subordinates, his zombies, in order to make himself king of the pirates, and he's supposed to serve as a foil for Luffy, who doesn't treat his crew like servants, but they still want to make him king of the pirates of their own free will. There are a couple examples of this in action, namely the entire takedown of Oars with the combined effort of the crew, while Moria sucks up everyone's shadows and still loses. But that's about it. I can't say that there isn't a theme that's delivered upon within this arc, even Zoro's final sacrifice plays into it. I just think it's a bit weak and not really in focus for the bulk of the story. I think the thing that disappointed me the most was the lack of payoff with the character of Sindri, and I know I seem to be harping on this one side character, but it really felt like she was set up to be something much more than she ended up being. Almost as if there was a plan for her that got cut, so she kind of faded out of the story after getting some pretty big build-up and seemingly an important moment in one of the core battles against the secondary antagonist. It felt like all the talk about personality with the zombies and how Moria was essentially taking away their free will and stripping them of who they were was going to lead somewhere. It felt like somehow the zombies were going to rebel, or at least Sindri and another core zombie like Oars were going to defy Moria due to his treatment of them, which would tip the scales in the favor of the Straw Hats. I'm not sure how it would have happened, and I'm not going to write some fan fiction right now, but for such a consistent element of this arc to be dropped, when it could have really added to the thematic impact of the story, was pretty disappointing, and I think it's a detriment to my overall feelings on this arc. Everyone then eats in the mansion, and while this isn't quite a classic Straw Hat party, it's definitely got those vibes, but a little more subdued, which I can appreciate, since this is also when we get Brook's full backstory fleshed out, even though he doesn't have any flesh, because he's a skeleton. I think it was nice to get such an in-depth look at Brook's past with the Rumbar Pirates, and watching the special bond he and Laboon had before entering the Grand Line ramped up the sadness of Laboon's story. I really like the musical Rumbar Pirates and their captain Calico something or other. I don't want to look up his name because I have a feeling he's coming back into the story at some point. He got a bit too nice of a farewell for me to believe he's gone forever, but we'll see. It was also a cool revelation to see that Brook was the acting captain of the pirates for a while, until their unfortunate defeat in battle. The absolute best part of this backstory, though, is seeing the final moments of the Rumbar Pirates and Brook's first life while they are singing Binks Booze, or sake if you're nasty. The fact that the remainder of the crew died while singing together after a terrible loss in battle is deeply sad and truly romantic. If I were a pirate, that would be one of the best ways I'd imagine going out, just singing with the boys. Brook then officially joins the crew, and the Straw Hats sail off from Thriller Bark with more gold and food than they came with. Also, Lola of the Lola Pirates, whose shadow was inside the Hog Zombie, offers Nami a special piece of paper called a Weaver card. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but it's a piece of paper that can guide you to the holder of the original, and that both sets up Lola's mom in the future, but also is a deep-cut callback to the paper Ace gave Luffy back in the Alabasta arc. We see it burning though, and that's not good. This arc had a lot of teases about Blackbeard's rise to Warlord and Ace's imprisonment in Impel Down, but Luffy doesn't seem as concerned as I am, so I have no clue what's going to happen. But that burning paper did not give me good vibes. I think this was a great way to end the saga. And that's that. Another One Piece arc and saga behind me. Ultimately, I did have fun with Thriller Bark, but it wasn't as satisfying a story as I had hoped for. It started really strong and ended really strong with a mushy, weak center. Kinda like a s'more. The next arc I'm going to be covering is another one I can't pronounce, Sabaudi Archipelago, in 2 weeks, but in the meantime, I'd really like to know your thoughts on Thriller Bark. What do you think of Moria as a villain? Which of the fights was your favorite? Also, in honor of Halloween, I would love to talk horror movies in general if you'd like to comment your favorite. I'm a big fan of the 80s slashers myself. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I really appreciate those of you who made it this far, as you're truly insane. I hope to see you in the next one, but until then, I'll shut up.